Okay, so now let's take a loop at a loop. For now, we do have a array up here, but just ignore that. We're going to go over the loop first, and then we're just going to use the array a bit later on. So this is what a loop generally looks like. This is the for loop, so we're going to type in the word for, and then we're going to have smooth brackets followed by curly brackets. So inside the smooth brackets here, it's basically going to ask, just like the if statement, it's asking for true or false, so something to be true or false. Then based on that, it's going to do something in the curly brackets. Except this time, it's going to loop through it multiple times. So loop is just going to keep going and going and going until this condition in here is no longer true. So I'll show you what it looks like, kind of a standard way that you type out a for loop, but there are some different ways you could do it. So the first thing you're going to want is a variable, and this is usually going to be some kind of an index. So kind of like an index variable. And the second one is going to be a condition, and the third is going to be some kind of change. So let's just go through that here. So inside the smooth brackets, we're going to have all three of those, at least for this example. So we're going to say let I equal 0 and put a semicolon. So this is the index. This is basically saying we're declaring a variable called I, which we're just using as short for index. So you could call that IND. Let's say we were talking about the array, we could use day maybe. It doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want. And right now we're setting it equal to 0, but you could start with any number that you want. Again, it doesn't matter. But this is usually what you'll see when you're doing a for loop. So the next thing is we need a condition. So let's do if I is less than 10. So basically, we're going to keep doing whatever this for loop wants as long as the variable I is less than 10. Now the only problem with that is it's always going to be less than 10 unless we start changing I. So one way to do that is actually just to change it inside of this little statement here. So we're going to say I plus plus. Now that's actually the same as writing I equals I plus 1. So you're just adding 1 to the variable I, and it's just going to go up by 1 and save that. So if the first time around, if I is equal to 0, the second time around it's going to be 1, and then 2, 3, and so on. So we have those three things. We have let I equal 0. As long as I is less than 10, we're going to add 1 to I, so I plus plus. So what we're going to do is actually indent this a bit, just so it looks a bit better. And we're going to put something inside of here. So let's just console.log hi. So just a quick little message there. So basically this is going to run over and over and over until I is equal to 10 or greater than 10. So let's just click play, and you'll actually get to see that it's going to write out hi a whole bunch of times. So even though on line 10 I've only actually printed it out one time, because we're using a for loop, it's going to do it multiple times. So the same block of code is going to run over and over and over. Now what you're normally going to do with this kind of thing is you're actually going to use this letter I so that you can make changes inside the block of code. So let's just say I wanted to print out I, right? So I is a local variable that is only understood inside of these curly brackets. Since console log is inside them, we can use it. So let's just hit play, and we'll scroll down here. So we got 0 through 9, right? Because if we don't do 10, when I is equal to 10, so we added after 9, I became 10, I is actually equal to 10. So since it's not less than 10, we're not going to run this code anymore. So it's actually going to stop, and it's going to move on outside of the for loop. So it's going to move on to line 12 once we exit out of that. So that's what's happening there. I could say console.log, I don't know, all done down here. So you'll see it's going to go 0 to 9, and then it's going to print out that all done message. But it's just going to do it once because we are no longer in a loop. Okay, so why would you actually want to do this? So one really common thing is going to be within an array. So you can almost see it already. We have indexes, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So as we're going through, we can almost look at each individual item in the list using that index. So here we have 7 different things in the list. So let's say if I is less than 7, and let's actually print out everything in the list. So how we're going to do that is we're going to say day of the week, And before we did these square brackets, so whenever you're using an index, you're usually going to use square brackets and you're going to put a number inside. So if we said console.log day of the week 1, that's going to print out Tuesday. So I can actually click play and run, and it's going to print Tuesday a whole bunch of times. But let's say we want that to increase every time. So we want it to be Monday, then Tuesday, then Wednesday, and so on. Well, since we know that this letter I is actually going to be changing and doing exactly what we want, it's going to be 0, then 1, then 2, we can just write the letter I in here. So there's almost two things going on here, right? So first off, day of the week 0, like that, is the same as writing Monday, right? But instead of 0, we can actually swap out I. So I is now the same thing as writing 0. So the I is replaced by 0, day of the week. I is then going to be Monday. So it takes a little bit of thinking just to get it, just till you're comfortable using indexes. But once you can think of it that way, you can just start to swap stuff out, and we're going to be able to access everything in this list. So now if we do that with the I, instead of giving us the same day every week, it's going to say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So what happened is the first time it went around, it said console.log day of the week 0, which is Monday. And then we actually added 1 to I. So the second time that we ran these curly brackets, it's saying I is equal to 1. So now console.log day of the week 1, which is Tuesday. And then we added 1, like we do every time. And then the third time around, it's going to say day of the week is Wednesday, so 2, and so on and so forth. So that's going to give us an index that goes through every single one in the list. But the problem with that is, let's say we wrote 10. So let's say the list, or the number, sorry, was outside of that index. If we run that, we're actually going to get a couple undefines, right? So the reason for that is if we try and access index number 7, that's right over here, and it doesn't actually exist. So something that you're going to commonly do is you're actually going to put day of the week dot length. So that way, instead of just having some arbitrary number, we are switching that out for however many things are in the list, which in this case is 7 things. So again, it's going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're not dealing with indexes right now. It's actually how many things are in the list. Okay, so if we print that out, it should work again. And that's going to get rid of those undefines. So now we just have 1 for every day of the week. Now there's more that you can do once you have that index, right? So let's say you wanted to remove Thursday from the list, but you don't know where Thursday is. So we're actually going to keep all this the same. We're going to do an if statement though, instead of a console log. So we're going to say if day of the week I equals say Wednesday. And then we are going to, let's actually remove it. So let's say day of the week dot splice I. So see here, we're starting to use the letter I instead of an actual number. And the reason for that is we can just assume that I is going to be every single number all at once, or as it goes through. So it's going to change every single time. So each case is going to be covered. So here we do day of the week splice, whoops, not like that, sorry. So we do I, 1, and let's actually just leave it there. So what we're saying here is if on this particular cycle, and it's going to check every cycle, if day of the week I is equal to Wednesday, so the first time that's not going to be true, right? So the first time day of the week I is 0, so it's Monday. So Monday does not equal Wednesday. Day of the week 1 is going to be Tuesday. And then when I is set to 2, Wednesday is going to equal Wednesday. So now we're actually going to go into line 12. So even though this line here has been run twice already, this is actually going to be the first time and only time that this is going to run. So now you can start to see how you can have a for loop and an if statement inside of the for loop. So you can really start to nest stuff inside each other to get some really cool functionality. So what we're basically doing here is we're going through every single thing, and if it matches with the word Wednesday, we are going to remove it at the index that we're currently on. So even though we don't know what index Wednesday is, we know that this will run when we have the proper index. So let's print out the list here instead. So we're going to print out the whole list at the end. And you can see that Wednesday is actually missing. So that worked just as we wanted it to. When we found Wednesday, we found the index and we removed it. And again, you could add something in. So let's say we want to add in hello. And let's go there. So you can see now instead of Wednesday, we actually have the word hello. So we said get rid of whatever's at index 2, and instead we want to have the word hello. So that is a for loop. It's something you're going to see a lot. It does take a little to wrap your head around it, but very, very useful.